Hello students, I'm Umesh Singh, Department of English, DAV PG College, Varanasi. Once again, I'm here in front of you with a new video, and this video is related to the chapter Active and Passive Voice. Students, as far as this topic is concerned, this one is for those students who have enrolled themselves into advanced diploma course and diploma course. Now let us focus on active and passive voice. Active and passive voice. Now, voice is a form of a verb that shows whether the subject is the doer or performer of the action or the recipient or sufferer of the action. If the subject is the doer, the verb is in active voice. If something happens to the subject, the verb is in passive voice. Means to say that when the verb is in active mode, it means that the subject of the sentence is doing something and the subject is the doer of that particular sentence. Then in that case, the verb is in active mode. And in the second case, when something is done to the subject, the verb is in passive mode. Now, let us consider this sentence. The boy opened the door. The verb is active. Why? Because the subject, which is the boy, is active, is the doer. Hence, the verb is in active mode, and this particular sentence is in active voice. Now, the verb is passive and the door was opened by the boy. Now, why is the verb passive? The verb is passive because something is done to the subject, which is the door. Hence, the verb is in passive mode, and that is why this sentence is in passive voice. Now, let us consider another sentence, which is Shakespeare wrote Hamlet. Now, here Shakespeare is the subject and this is the doer in this sentence. Hence, the verb wrote is in active mode, and that is why this sentence is in active voice. And in the next sentence, which is Hamlet was written by Shakespeare, this one is in passive voice. Why? Because the subject is Hamlet and something is done to the subject. Hence, the verb is in passive voice. Now, let us consider a very important point in this regard. And that important point is that an intransitive verb has no passive voice. Now, students, what is an intransitive verb? An intransitive verb is that type of verb which does not contain an object. So, as far as these two sentences are concerned, birds fly high and he sings well. These two sentences are having intransitive verbs, and hence these two sentences do not have objects. That is why it is not possible to convert these two sentences from active to passive voice. Now, the next point is when a sentence is changed from active to passive voice, four things are to be kept in mind. The first one is the object of the active verb becomes the subject of the passive verb. And the second one is the subject of the active verb becomes a prepositional object. The third one is the verb is changed from active to passive mode. And the fourth one is if the active sentence is a question, the question form should be used in the passive. Now let us analyze some examples. Let us take up simple present first. Now, this sentence, John washes the car. Now, this one is in simple present tense, and this particular sentence is in active voice. Why is this sentence is in active voice? Because the subject John is the doer, is performing an action. Hence, the verb washes is in active voice, and that is why this sentence is in active voice. Now, when we convert this sentence into passive form, it reads like this. The car is washed by John. Now, this particular sentence is in passive voice. Why? Because the subject, the car. Now, something is done to the subject. Subject is the sufferer. Hence, the verb is in passive voice. Now the next one is present progressive tense. Now this sentence, John is washing the car, is in present progressive or present continuous tense, and this one is in active voice. John is washing the car. Again, John is the subject, is washing is in active voice. This is the verb, and the car is the object. So as per rule, the object will become the subject and the subject will become the object, and the verb will be changed into passive form. So the sentence, the car is being washed by John, is in passive voice. Why? Because the car which was the object of the previous sentence has become the subject, and John, which was the subject of the previous sentence, has become the object, and is being washed has been converted into passive form. So this one is passive voice. And students, here one important point is by, which is preposition, isn't it? So normally when we change a sentence from active to passive form, we use by preposition. Okay, and by is immediately followed by an object. Hence this one is very important. Now the next one is present perfect tense. Now let us consider this sentence. John has washed the car. This one is in present perfect tense, and the sentence is in active voice. John is the subject, the car is the object, has washed is in active mode, the verb. Now when we change it into passive form, then the changes which are important are, the first one is again the same thing. The object becomes the subject becomes the object, and has washed, which is active voice, which is the verb, is converted into passive form, which is has been washed. So the car has been washed by John. This one is in passive form. Now the next one is simple past. John washed the car, and the sentence is in active voice. John is the subject, washed is the verb, which is in active mode. Why? Because John is the doer in this sentence, and the car is the object. So when we convert this into passive voice, it reads like this: the car was washed by John, and this one is in passive voice. And the next one is past progressive tense or past continuous tense, and the sentence is John was washing the car. This one is in active voice. Again the same thing. John is the subject, this subject, and this subject is the doer of the action. Hence the verb, which is was washing, is in active mode, followed by the object, which is the car. Now when we convert this into passive voice, the sentence reads like the car was being washed by John. So was washing is changed into passive form, which is was being washed. And the next one is past perfect. John had washed the car. Now this one is in active voice. And when we change this into passive mode, then it reads like this: the car had been washed by John. And this one is passive voice. Obviously, the important changes are the car, which is the object, becomes the subject. John, which is the subject, becomes the object. And had washed, which is in active mode, becomes the is changed into passive mode, which is had been washed. Hence the entire sentence reads like the car had been washed by John, and this one is in passive voice. And the next one is simple future, which is John will wash the car. This one is in active voice. Why? Because John, the subject, is the doer. Okay, and hence the subject is the doer. It has taken an active verb. The verb is active in this particular sentence. Hence this one is an active voice. And when this sentence gets converted into a passive voice, then it reads like this: the car will be washed by John. Again, the changes are the object, the car, becomes the subject, and the subject, John, becomes the object, and the verb will wash becomes is converted into passive voice, which is will be washed. Hence it reads like the car will be washed by John, which is in passive voice. And another important thing is be going to, and the sentence is John is going to wash the car. Again, this one is in active voice. When we convert this into passive voice, it reads like the car is going to be washed by John. Now this one is passive voice. Future perfect. Future perfect. John will have washed the car. Again, this one is an active voice. And when we change this into passive voice, it reads like, the car will have been washed by John. The car will have been washed by John. This one is in passive voice. And again, the changes are object, which is the car, becomes the subject, which is the car. And the subject, John, becomes the object, which is John. And the verb, which is in active mode, will have washed, will be changed into passive form, which is will have been washed. Hence, this one is passive voice. Now, when you get interrogative sentences, then it is very important to keep the structure of the interrogative sentence intact. This one is very important because if you change the structure of the interrogative sentence, then it will become incorrect. So it is very important to keep the structure of the interrogative sentence as it is while changing a sentence from active voice to passive voice. And the first one is, does John wash the car? Now, this one is an interrogative sentence and the tense is simple present. Does is the helping verb, followed by John, which is the subject. Wash is in active mode, followed by the object, which is the car. And this one is an active voice. Now, when we convert this into passive voice, it reads like, is the car washed by John? Is the helping verb. Why? Because we need to keep the structure of the interrogative sentence intact. Hence, we will have to do two things. First, the sentence must begin with a helping verb. Second, the tense of the sentence must not be changed. Okay, so since the tense of the original sentence is in simple present tense, the change of the converted sentence will also have to be in simple present tense. So it becomes, is the car washed by John? Now look, this structure is interrogative sentence. It has been kept intact, and finally it ends with the mark of interrogation, right? Now similarly, is John washing the car? And this one is in present continuous tense and the type is interrogative sentence. Now students, interrogative sentence is that type of sentence through which we ask question, right? So this sentence is in active mode, and when it is converted into passive voice, it reads like, is the car being washed by John? This one is in passive voice. And the next one is, has John washed the car? This one is an active voice. And John is the subject, the car is the object, washed is obviously in active mode. And when we convert this into passive voice, it reads like, has the car been washed by John? Again, the car is the subject, which was the object of the previous sentence, and John, which is the object of this sentence, was the subject of the previous sentence. And yes, the verb has been changed into passive form. So this sentence is in passive voice. And the next one is, did John wash the car? Now this one is in simple past, which is in active mode. And when this is converted into passive voice, it reads like, was the car washed by John? Now look at the tense of these two sentences. Did John wash the car? The tense is simple past. When we change it into passive voice, again, the tense does not change. It remains the same. Was the car washed by John? Now the tense is simple past. Only the verb has been converted into passive form. And obviously, two important changes. Subject becomes object and object becomes subject. So this one is in passive voice. And the next one is, when did John wash the car? Again, this one is in simple past. When did John wash the car? This one is in active voice. Why active voice? Because John is the subject and John is the doer in the sentence. Hence, the verb is in active mode, which is wash. So when we convert this into passive voice, then it reads like, when was the car washed by John? When was the car washed by John? And the car, which was the object of the previous sentence, becomes the subject. And John, which was the subject of the previous sentence, becomes the object of this sentence. And the sentence reads like, when was the car washed by John? Now, the structure remains the same. The structure, which is interrogative sentence, remains the same. And this one is in passive voice. Now the next one is who washed the car. This one is in active voice. Who washed the car? And the tense of this particular sentence is in simple past. And when we convert this into passive voice, it reads like, who was the car washed by? This one is in passive voice. Now again, the structure of the sentence, which is interrogative, has been kept intact. And there is another way of converting this active voice into passive voice. And the second one is, by whom was the car washed? This one again is in passive voice. This one is also correct. And yes, the structure of the interrogative sentence has been kept intact, and also the tense of the sentence has been kept intact. Now, the next important point is that if the subject of the active sentence is unknown or unimportant, the by phrase can be left out. It is not often necessary to say who performed the action. Now, considering this particular sentence, someone washed the car yesterday, and this one is an active voice. Now, let us try to figure out the subject and object in this particular sentence. The subject is someone, followed by verb washed, followed by the object, which is the car, isn't it? And yesterday, which is an adverb. Now, since the subject is not important, the subject is someone, hence this particular subject is not important. So when we convert this into passive form, then it is not mandatory to mention the subject or the prepositional object. We can avoid mentioning the prepositional object. So the sentence reads like, the car was washed yesterday. And here the prepositional object, which could have been by someone, has been omitted completely. So this one is also correct. The car was washed yesterday. This one is in passive voice. And we have left out someone, which is the subject of the previous sentence. Why? Because as per rule, the subject is not important. Hence, we have left it out. Similarly, the second example, which is they have painted the house, which is an active voice. And let us figure out the subject and object and verb in this particular sentence. The subject is they, and verb is obviously have painted. Have is the helping verb, painted is the main verb, and this one is in active mode. Why? Because subject they is the doer of the action, and the object is the house, isn't it? So this one is in active voice. Now, when we convert this into passive voice, then what happens? Obviously, object becomes the subject, the house becomes the subject, and which was the subject? They is the subject in the previous sentence. It has been left out. Why? Because they is an unimportant subject. So as per rule, we can leave it out. So the sentence reads, the house has been painted. The house has been painted. But if you write the house has been painted by them, then too it is correct. But it would be better if you omit the prepositional object. So this one is in passive voice. Some verbs take two objects in the passive. Either object can become the subject. Now again, this one is very important because there are certain sentences which contain two objects. So we can convert a sentence into passive form with the help of either of the two subjects. Now let us see how. The example is, they give the girl a new dictionary. Now this one is active voice. Now let us try to figure out subject and object. Now they gave the girl. Now they is the subject because they is performing an action. They is the doer. Hence gave is the verb, and gave is in active mode. The girl. Gave whom? The girl. So the girl is the object. Gave the girl what? A new dictionary. Again, this one is another object. So this particular sentence is containing two objects. So when we convert this particular sentence into passive voice, we can convert this into passive voice with the help of either of these two objects. Now let us see how. The girl was given a new dictionary. This one is in passive voice. The girl, look, the girl was the object of the previous sentence. And with the help of this object, we have converted this particular sentence into passive form, and the sentence reads like, the girl was given a new dictionary. And here again, we have omitted the subject, which could have been they, and prepositional object we have completely omitted, because as per rule, they, the subject, is an unimportant identity, hence we have omitted it. Now the same sentence can be converted into passive voice with the help of the second object, which is a new dictionary was given to the girl. A new dictionary, which was the second object of the previous sentence, was taken as subject of this particular sentence, and with the help of that we have converted that sentence into passive voice. A new dictionary was given to the girl. Again, this one is correct, and we have omitted prepositional object because the subject they is an unimportant identity, right? Now, another important aspect in active and passive voice, and that aspect is the passive of an imperative sentence is formed with let. Now students, what is an imperative sentence? An imperative sentence is that type of sentence which contains order, request, advice, suggestion, etc. So let us see how. Consider this particular sentence, bring all the files. Now this one is an imperative sentence because this sentence is containing an order. Okay, when we go through this particular sentence, we can easily make out that yes, a kind of order is being given through this particular sentence, isn't it? Bring all the files. And this one is in active voice. Now when we convert this into passive voice, we do like this. And yes, this let plays a very important role when this particular sentence or such type of sentences are converted into passive voice. So the sentence reads like, let all the files be brought. Let all the files be brought. Bring all the files, let all the files be brought. So this one is in passive voice, and the possible formula could be let followed by the subject, which is all the files, followed by be, followed by V3, which is brought. And students, when we use be is immediately followed by third form of the verb, and here the third form of the verb is brought. So let all the files be brought. Now this one is passive voice. Now if we consider the sense of these two sentences, the sense is the same, right? Now when the sense is the same and when we have stuck to all the procedures, then this particular conversion is complete. And when the sense is correct, then obviously we can say that this is one of the important golden rules of transformation of sentences, because when a particular sentence is converted from one form to the other, and when the sense of the two sentences remains the same, it means the conversion has been completed. It means the conversion has been completed, and that too in a correct manner. So obviously it is very important to keep the sense of the two sentences intact while converting a particular sentence from one type to the other. Okay, now let us consider the second example, which is arrest the man. Again, this one is an imperative sentence. Kind of order is given through this particular sentence. Sorry. Arrest the man. This one is an active voice. Now again, similarly with the help of let, we can convert this into passive voice, and let the man be arrested. Let followed by the subject, followed by be, followed by V3. So let the man be arrested. Now the man, okay, so the man which was the object of this particular sentence has become the subject. So let the man be arrested. So this one is in passive voice. So students, this is all about active and passive voice. I have tried to cover all the aspects of active and passive voice. If you have any query, feel free to contact me. Thank you so much. Thank you.